Morning. You are locked in live, and I'm your host, Algenon Cash. That's right. It's Sunday morning, and every Sunday morning, I ask you to meet me right here on WTOB at 8 o'clock for the only public affairs radio show that brings you my unique commentary on a wide range of topics. And of course, you always get a sneak peek at the values and principles that I use in my own daily life to achieve success. If you're listening to the show and you love what you hear, I would only ask that you invite others to join you here on Sunday morning. Share it with a friend so that you can spread some of this good information and good news that we're sharing here in our backyard. And I've got another exciting show for you. I am so excited to have my good friend Clarence Henderson on this morning. Clarence Henderson was hailed as a hero nearly 60 years ago when, as a young black man, he participated in a sit-in at a segregated North Carolina lunch counter. He attended North Carolina A&T University when, as an 18-year-old, he joined the original 4 lunch counter protesters on the second day of their protest. And he and fellow protesters were arrested for their actions. However, it sparked similar protests throughout the South, which led to the desegregation of lunch counters and other nonviolent protests against racist policies. Clarence Henderson is now president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. And if you caught the RNC convention this past week, you saw Mr. Henderson as one of the keynote speakers. Clarence, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the show.
I am doing great, Algenon. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You can only imagine my surprise and my excitement when I was sitting here in my own living room watching the RNC convention and saw you pop up on the screen, and you shared some really profound words. So I'm very honored to have you here on the show and sharing some commentary and some insight with our listeners here. So I'm just going to kick into it. Clarence, I shared a little bit of your bio and background around some of the work that you did during the 1960s. I think we all can agree that that was probably one of the most divisive periods in our country. And it was a period when a lot of African Americans were victims of injustice and extreme violence, whether it be police brutality, destruction of private property, racial profiling, you name it. It was all going on back in this period. I'm just curious, for someone like you who successfully went through that period and then you still find yourself active today, Clarence, how would you compare the 60s to what we're seeing right now at today's time plastered across our small and large screens?
Well, there's a great difference between now and then, in that our Constitution says we have the right to peaceably protest and bring issues to the forefront that need to be recognized about across America. And that's what I participated in, was a peaceful movement whereby that we put Jim Crow on trial and Jim Crow was found guilty. What worked was that it was peaceful. So now during today's times, what we see is that we have protests out here, which are legal protests. When they break into violence and mayhem and looting and all this, it becomes chaos and it tears down rather than building up. So my advice to those who are out here protesting now is to make it peaceful, and so that your point can be heard, so that people begin to understand what you're protesting for. So first of all, you have to know why you're protesting and what you're trying to achieve, because in my mind, there are 2 kinds of protests. One is an agenda-driven protest, which commits tyranny and oppression upon people, drive us back toward King George III. And there's a principle-driven movement that we defend our freedom, because freedom is not free; it must be defended at all times.
I largely agree with you, Clarence. I'm a big study of Martin Luther King Jr. By far one of my heroes, and I have tried to spend a good deal of my life trying to even emulate to some degree the behavior that I feel like King demonstrated and led during that period. And he was on record of being a prominent supporter of nonviolent protests. He felt like any type of violence sort of distracted from the message. And even in a lot of the government advocacy work that I've done over the last 20 years, a lot of it has been focused on messaging, because I do believe messaging really matters. I also, you're actually one of, when I met you many, many years ago, you were one of the few people that I actually knew from that period of time. Now, my grandparents were great influencers in my life, but to be honest with you, my grandparents weren't really active during that 1960s protest period. My mom wasn't really active either. But you were one of the first people that I've met in real life who were really active during that period. So to me, I don't know how my listeners may feel about this, but to me, you're one of the founding fathers of effective peaceful protest, at least in my own mind. But today you do see these what start out to be nonviolent protests, oftentimes quickly spiral into violence. And you were a young man back in the 60s when you were protesting. What advice would you have for some of these young protesters today if you could sit down and talk with them?
My advice to them would be to know exactly the history of the thing that they're dealing with. Any quote unquote racism or injustice, know what that injustice is and know how to deal with it. There has to be a strategy for dealing with these various things. And the idea and the understanding needs to be is that it is we, the people, that can make the decision and not they, the government. And we make those decisions based upon things like what I did. And where we can make another decision is be proactive and get out and vote during the time of election time this time. And think before you vote and not vote before you think, because we don't vet people well enough to know if they hold the same values as we do when we vote for them. So the bottom line is that we need to understand that 535 people should not be telling 320 million plus people what they should or should not do. And so the only way we can do that is to get the elected officials to understand that they work for us and we don't work for them. So again, I think of them as my employees, and my vote is a contract between me and them. And my vote will be my hiring you because I think that you will act toward the values that I have.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent for holding our elected officials a lot more accountable, and in order to do that, you've got to really understand these issues and the depth of the issues, in order to actually hold those accountable that are responsible for representing you, whether that be at the national level or state level, or even more importantly, in my opinion, the most important level of politics is right here locally, your city council, county commissioners, and school board members, and so forth. Just to play devil's advocate with you a little bit, Clarence, though, here in the matter of the past few days, we saw the NFL, we saw the MLB, we saw the NHL all decide not to play in national games as a show of nonviolent protests against some of the racial injustice that we see around this country. And I think a lot of this was spurred because of the video that got released many days ago of a young man in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back. I think the gun was fired 7 times. He was hit 4 times. But as a response to that, you had major sporting teams decide to protest and not play in games. And many would say that those were peaceful. That's a peaceful, nonviolent way of protesting. How do you feel about major athletes deciding to protest these kind of injustices?
I think all voices should be heard, and I appreciate them doing it in a peaceful way because it brings to the forefront the attention, as you said, of the injustices that are occurring during this date and time. And they are very influential people in that people watch them on a regular basis and consider them as being sports heroes or whatever. So they are doing it the right way. That's the start. But I would advise each one of them, if they can, some of them may be doing it now, to start some types of programs where to begin to go back into the underprivileged neighborhoods and begin to share with these children how they came about their situation, what they did, and putting some programs in place that will help these kids as far as understanding how you process your way through the American system. First of all, one of the things is that we have to be concerned about, and I'll give you an example. When I was in business for myself, I had 2 young men come into my office and wanted to go to work for me, and I was in the financial services industry, and they filled an application. It was actually 3, and they were all around 27, 28. And when it got down to the part about have you committed a felony, when that came up, that it limited them whatsoever. And so I would say to people that don't get yourself in a situation where you have that kind of thing going on, a felony, so that you have a great opportunity to succeed in the system. So I admire them again for doing a peaceful protest, and I'm hoping that they will go back into some of the neighborhoods and begin to share with our kids about how you can become success in whatever avenue you choose to go into. Here's the bottom line: it's not where you start, it's where you finish, and it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. There is a success system in America, and it's a free market system, and it may be a little tougher for us than it as is for others. But again, I was in that industry for almost 30 years, and I got in for a fee at that time of $35 to get an insurance license, and then I started doing mortgages, investing in things like that. So each person can find their own road here if they choose to. It may be hard work, but the question is it worth it? So
Yeah.
what I think I look at. Here's the problem. I consider myself Algenon as being a solutionologist. I look for problems that I can solve or help solve, and that's the best way that we can come up with this.
Now, you know, when you think about entertainment, whether it be celebrities or sports athletes and so many others, if you go back to the root of why these different venues were created, they were often created by the Romans as a form of entertainment to actually distract the people from the issues that were going on day to day. So what do you say to those people who say, you know what, some of these guys ought to just shut up and dribble the ball and keep entertaining people?
Well, again, that's up to them. The one thing I would say to the athletes is know some history of what you're dealing with. For example, anything that's going on in America today, be able to substantiate the statements that you make so they cannot be repudiated. If it's your opinion, let people know it's your opinion. When you start talking about facts versus fiction, or facts versus not being reality, then you have to be able to, and I don't mean in disrespect, but it says that you need to it's better be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. I work very hard to study my craft to know when I speak that I'm speaking from a place, point of reference that I've gone out and studied these things and know who's and what's what. So my advice would be to know the American history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And once you know that, if you know about slavery, you can speak on that. If you know about Jim Crow, you can speak on that. If you know about any injustices going on right now, if you have the facts, and whatever people say, it doesn't matter, because I don't know if you remember, there used to be a show that came on TV. It was called Dragnet. And
Oh, yeah.
Joe Friday, when the women were saying they were giving him all this stuff, he said, just the facts, man, just the facts. And that's what I try to do. And let each person make their own decision. Because, see, I can't play at that level of sports that they play because they are well equipped, they're athletic, are able to do it, and they've been trained and all this. So the same way that they're doing now, they have to do the same thing when they enter into this new venue.
I like that, and it sounds like what you're doing is imploring them to, as much time as you spend honing your talent and your craft, you should spend just as much time understanding the history of these public policies, how they came about,
That's exactly right.
the effects that they've had on so many different communities. I really like the way you put that. In your speech at the RNC, you also seem to take people to task that a lot of times they don't understand their history. I just heard you mention it a moment ago, just again. First of all, tell my listeners what was it like to be on that grand stage at the RNC, and how's life been in the 24 hours after?
I have got some great response. I've got some negatives, but I don't deal on the negatives. I speak for Clarence Henderson and what I believe. And so I'm hoping that what I'm doing now will bring to the forefront what citizens can do, because I'm an average, ordinary guy that was born on what people would call the wrong side of the tracks. Don't even have a birth certificate. The wrong side of the tracks for me was a farm in Townville, South Carolina. And I can remember as a kid, 3 or 4 years of age, trying to help my mother pick cotton. My parents only had a third grade education, but my father had a great craft. He was a mechanic, so when he came off of the farm, what he was able to do was he went to work for himself and took care of himself and 3 children and a wife, and on a part-time basis. He was so good that some of the dealerships years ago should bring cars to him that their guys couldn't fix it, had a piece of paper on the wall. So again, for me, it's just a matter of when the opportunity presents itself to take advantage of the opportunity, because see, Algenon, as you know, defining moments are not unusual. We all have them. Those moments don't define us. What we do in those moments, that's what defines us. So I define that moment when I sit down at that lunch counter. And I've used that as a bridge from this point forward to build upon and let people know whatever you decide that you want to do. Is a poem I remember when I was growing up. It said, keep it going no matter what, just keep it going. And that's what I've done. I did not do it for what's happening right now. I did it, Algenon, because it was something that needed to be done. When you're walking into we're walking to FW Woolworths as a kid, if you went downstairs, you saw two bathrooms, one saying color and one saying white. You saw 2 water fountains saying one saying color and one saying white. And I used to look at the water and see that they looked the same and wonder what the difference was. There was no difference. It was about the color of somebody's skin and not the content of their character. So America will always be judged by the content of its characters as people. And we have an opportunity to present to people and share with people and teach people things that, the bottom line for me is, Algenon, is that I understand that my rights end where yours begin. And if I want to try to infringe upon your rights, I am committing oppression upon you. I don't care what you look like, black, white, red, or yellow. And I've always stood by that. If someone wants to take away Clarence Henderson's freedom, I got a problem with it. I know you have several businesses. And what if I were to come in and try to take those businesses away from you in a hostile way, try to take away those businesses? You would want to defend your business.
Now, I thought the commentary that you provided at the RNC convention was very poignant, and certainly appreciate you doing it. And I've known you for many years, and so a lot of what you said at the convention wasn't necessarily new to me in terms of understanding your position on things. And I think it's remarkable. And again, congratulations that you were given such a big platform and a big stage to be able to get that same message out nationally. And so I'm happy to hear that there are so many people that have been receptive. But as you also alluded to, there have been some people that were not so receptive. And, even on my own timeline on Facebook, when I shared your speech, I got somewhat of a visceral reaction, and oftentimes a visceral reaction from people who look like you and myself, Clarence. And, part of that reaction was, I think, tied to the fact that at the convention and during your speech, you actually endorsed President Donald Trump for another 4 years. I think there are a lot of people who feel like over the years, even going back to the 70s or the 80s, that Mr. Trump has engaged in some racist comments, or even to some degree, some people allege even racist behavior, going back to some of the things he's done as it relates to real estate in New York. So I just want to ask you flat out, I've never actually been around, well, I've been around Donald Trump. I've never met him. I've seen him give a speech. I know you've actually visited the White House and had an opportunity to participate in some different events. And so I just ask you flat out, is President Donald Trump a racist, or is he simply racially insensitive?
Let me say this to you. Do you remember the lady, Jennifer Holliday, the singer? When that tragedy occurred to her, Donald Trump put her up in Trump Towers, and she didn't have to pay anything until she got herself together. It's strange to me that I see pictures of Donald Trump being with Don King, with Jesse Jackson, with Al Sharpton, and he's helped a number of those people. So why did it change from when he became, instead of a private citizen, to the President of the United States? This is what I hold him accountable to. Since he's been in office, I have challenged anybody to show me one policy that he's put in place that's racist. When you look at the HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, he has guaranteed that they will have funds come in for the next 10 years, more than the past president. When you look at prison reform, 91% of the people that have come out of the prison reform look like me and you. When you look at opportunity zones, which have been in the underprivileged areas, low-income areas, who has been at the forefront of that? Again, Donald Trump. When we look at school choice, Who has been the forefront of that? Donald Trump, who is also in favor of pro-life. Okay, let's go back to school choice. Here's what I see with that. I grew up in an era of time known as segregation. They would not let us in the white school. Now they won't let us out of their schools when our kids are failing. So it's a reverse form of discrimination. And these parents should have a choice as to where their kids would go to have the best opportunity. We have a governor right here, right now, that does not endorse that. When it comes to life choice, then you have a governor that said if a baby is born, a baby born alive, then do not just let the baby die. See, so how can we do that when we got most of the babies that are being born, being aborted percentage-wise, are black babies. For every black baby that's born in New York, you got 2 that are aborted. So we had to look at this thing realistic as to who's doing what. Now, if Donald Trump comes out with any racist policies, I'll be the first one to call him out. He is not a politician. He is a leader in the field that he came out of, and politicians are dime a dozen, but leaders are priceless. And so I look at this guy to see what's the best choice for us, because when Hillary Clinton was running, she said that the church had to change its mind about abortion. Well, based on what I believe, then that's wrong. So I couldn't vote for her based on that. And then when they said about the economy, she says, I'll have Bill take care of that. That simply means that she didn't know anything about the economy. But Donald Trump has proven that he understands a free market capitalistic economy that's in America. And when you have a politician that does not understand that, they can be most dangerous. They may have good intentions, like putting a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, and you say, well, he hasn't necessarily implemented racist policies, but going back to the start of his initial term here, I mean, when you look at the fact that he ran his campaign on the idea of building a wall to keep, Mexicans out of this country, that he also, within the first 100 days of him being in office, he wrote an executive order banning all Muslims from coming into the country. Do you not necessarily see those as racist policies, or was that just him keeping campaign promises?
Here's the thing I say about it. Let's deal with the first issue. You said Mexicans. The Mexicans he was talking about are illegal aliens. Now I'll break that down to I'll micromanage that, which was macro-managed. The same thing is me taking the doors off of my house and saying whoever wants to come in can come in, whoever wants to go into my refrigerator can go in my refrigerator, sleep in my bed, and have all the rights that I fought for. It's all right to come in this country based upon what they said a person said they can legally do, legally come into this country. So that part of it, I understand. Now, what was the next part you said?
Yeah, within his first 100 days in office, he wrote an executive order basically banning all Muslims from entering the country, and obviously, rescinded that order. But a lot of people saw that as a particular racist policy.
Again, here's the thing I would say about the Muslims. If they are people that have a history of committing violence or mayhem or terrorism, that's one thing. We have some Muslims in this country that are citizens, and they do everything that's like you and I do. But we have some in here that want to tear down the fabric of this country. And we have to know who's who and what's what. So again, my question to any person is that, what do you stand for? We have right now, and I'll say this now, quite frankly, we have 2 Muslim women that are on the Democrat side of our Congress that are saying everything they possibly can against this country, the free market capitalist system, so we should go into socialism, communism, all those kind of things, and those kind of things do not work.
If you're just now joining us, if you're just now waking up and turning on the radio, you are locked in live. I am your host, Algenon Cash, and you're listening to the voice of Clarence Henderson. Mr. Henderson is president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, a civil rights activist, and also just recently a keynote speaker at the RNC convention. One of the questions that I've gotten from Facebook, Clarence, is from Scott Arnold, and he actually asked whether or not you were safe when you left the White House when you gave your speech. But I think you pre-recorded your speech. You were in Greensboro, so that question may not be as
No, it's irrelevant. I was there.
Oh, you were in Washington, D.C. when you did it.
I was in the Rose Garden when he did his acceptance speech.
Understood. Okay. I know that one of the images that got plastered on our screen was when Rand Paul went to leave and was attacked by a mob of people that were coming out of as he was coming out of the White House. And when I watched that video, one of the things that they kept screaming at Rand Paul was to say her name. And that wasn't a reference to Breonna Taylor, who was killed in Kentucky as a result of a no-knock warrant from police officers. The interesting thing about the whole event is the fact that Senator Paul happens to be the only senator in the country that actually authored legislation to end no-knock warrants as a result of the death of Breonna Taylor. And so a lot of the people, I think, that was attacking him as he was leaving the White House was unaware of this. Do you think at the end of the day, I mean, do Republicans just have a messaging problem in terms of helping people understand some of the policies that they're working on in D.C.?
Algenon, you're exactly right. The reason why I became involved as far as the political arena of the Republican Party, besides voting Republican, I went to them and I said to them, you have a problem messaging. You do not share with people what the Republican Party platform stands for. The 13th Amendment, getting rid of slavery, the 14th Amendment, giving black men citizenship, the 15th Amendment, giving black people the right to vote. They are constantly allow the other side to frame the conversation instead of doing a contrast as to who's who and what's what. So that doesn't mean every Republican stands for that. It doesn't mean every Democrat stands for that. But here's what I look at the broad scope of it. I can only hold the Democratic Party responsible and accountable for what their platform says, and I can only do the same thing for the Republican Party. And if one of them steps out and I have a chance to speak on them not representing the people, then I'll call them out in a heartbeat. Yeah, and so you're right. The messaging, it's like, what are the benefits? It's like the difference. If you were going to sell me a car, and you would tell me the benefits of having an air conditioner versus the benefits, the non-benefits of not having the air conditioner. So the bottom line would be, what would be the benefits and what would be the value of my buying your car? What would be the value of voting Republican or for a particular person as opposed to voting for this person over there on the other side of the aisle? So I look at it as value voting as opposed to Republican or Democrat. I'm a conservative that looks for people that represent what Clarence Henderson is all about.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that's contributing, not only messaging, but I do think that there's been a erosion and deterioration of public trust. And right. Unfortunately, there's so many people who don't trust the criminal justice system. They don't trust their elected officials. They just don't trust a number of these institutions that have been created around us. And that's something that I think we've all got to actively work towards to repair and rehabilitate. And I know one of the things, I'm running out of time. I've probably got 1 minute left. I know one of the things that you've been doing is through the Frederick Douglass Foundation is trying to educate people more about these kind of policies and to try to build up this trust and maybe even work with those who want to go out and serve the public. Real quickly, can you just tell my listeners a little bit about the Frederick Douglass Foundation and some of the positive work you all are doing there?
The Frederick Douglass Foundation is a public policy organization that stands up for the voices that are unheard, that brings issues to the public about what's happening, for example, in the urban areas, so people can recognize what needs to be done. I have the opportunity at this point to sit on a central committee for the Republican Party, and I bring issues to the forefront that they have no idea about so that we can discuss these things and I work toward us coming up with some kind of resolution for that. So again, I'm doing the same thing now that I was doing in 1960. A lot of people don't understand. I'm still fighting for the underserved people, the people that are being attacked for the color of their skin or their ideology or whatever it is, Algenon.
No, I appreciate you all. And if other people wanted to learn about the foundation, real quick, what's the website?
It's FDFNC.site. FDFNC.site.
Well, I would encourage my listeners.
I'm sorry, let me say again, FDFNC.site. SITE.
I would encourage my listeners to go look that up, learn more about the work that they are doing, not just here in your backyard, but they're doing this work nationally. And again, you've been locked in live. I am your host every Sunday morning right here on WTOB at 8 a.m. I asked you to join me for a public affairs conversation. My guest this morning has been Clarence Henderson, civil rights activist and keynote speaker at the RNC convention. I would encourage you to go online, Google Clarence Henderson, learn more about the work that he's doing, try to connect with him on Facebook and some of the other social media platforms that are available out there. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, I would ask that you reach out to me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Look for Algenon Cash. And next Sunday, I would encourage you to not come alone. Invite a friend, and y'all stay locked in.
Thanks a lot, Algenon.